G'day mate and welcome to Shipbuilding with me, Jitty. In this Shipbuilding Fundamentals series, we've covered everything from the basics of actually building your first ship, also engine design and how to efficiently save some fuel. Of course, we've covered Asteroid Collectors and also Asteroid Crushers. Today, we're covering ship storage. Now, there are a few well-known ways of storing things on the ship, those being things like the hub and of course on belts. But today, I want to get into less known ways of storing items on the ship. But before that, I just want to ask, can I borrow a like? I like to borrow a like before I fill your head with a whole bunch of information and then you forget to throw it on the video. So what I ask is, can I borrow it right now? Now, if you didn't find the video helpful, you didn't learn anything along the way, by all means, you can have your like back. For storage options, we have a number of different ways of storing things, and there's probably a number of them you've been doing for quite some time. Of course, you can store things inside the hub. I guarantee you've been doing that for a little while. Also, you can put down cargo bays and connect these to the hub, also to the landing pad. Each one of these is going to increase its internal storage by 20 for a common one, 20 for a normal quality one, and then 26 for an uncommon. We have 32 for a rare. We have 38 for an epic, and then for a legendary you increase the storage by 50, which is a decent amount of storage, but also you are gonna, every single time you put down a storage bay, use 16 total tiles. So you really want to make sure that whatever you're storing in here is going to be storage effective over 16 tile storage and only getting you, well, 50 slots at the high end or 20 slots at the low end. So that brings us on to the first way you've been storing items, and you've probably been doing this for a little while, and that is of course inside machines. As you can see, I have a couple of asteroids here, also have a little bit of iron ore over here. I have a whole lot of iron plate, and then of course I have an assembler that has some ammo in it, also a little bit of iron plate. I'm outputting that to a belt. As you can see, I'm storing 7 bits of ammo on the actual belt, and of course I'm also storing some ammo inside the guns. These are all very valid storage options, but the first thing you should probably consider is maybe you should stack your ammo. I have the same 3 belt segment, technically that's 2, this is 3, whatever it happens to be. There we go, keep things fair. We're now storing 11. Cool. Over here, I'm stacking in here. I'm now storing 44 items. Also, because I'm using a stack inserter, well, normal inserter only picks up 12 items, so it puts 12 rounds inside the gun. A stack inserter picks up 16 items, therefore this gun has 16 rounds in it, which can vastly increase the amount of storage that you can get just by simply stacking items to start with, and then also stacking them before they go into the machine. Now, we can exemplify that with a couple of other examples. Over here we have, well, the very same setup. We have our crusher into our smelter, into our assembly machine, and can we just get a read on you and you? We can get read, hold please, we're up to 182 rounds. Can I get the read the contents of this? 188 rounds. So I have 188 rounds between all my guns, the belt itself, the inserter, and the machine. That's not bad, but you might also notice that each of these machines have double inserters in, and that's because, well, the first machine happens to have 16 rounds, the second one happens to have 23, the third one happens to have 21, and then the last one has 22, and that is because both these inserters, in many of these cases, picked up at the same time, so they managed to shove twice the amount of ammo in here. This can be further increased by buffering your ammo inside extra guns. It does give you a whole lot of redundancy for, well, extra ammo storage. And if we just get this done, yep, that's going to take a while to refill, but we're going to increase our ammo storage by a significant amount because we're storing extra ammo inside extra guns. And also means that when they're going to be fed, when they run out of their 16 rounds, 12 rounds, whatever it happens to be, they're going to be automatically fed whatever rounds the previous one has, preferably 2 inserters at a time from 2 different guns, which both increases our total amount of storage of ammo, also moves it from gun to gun faster because each gun is treated as a box, whereas inserter grabbing off a belt is much slower. But if I just give this a minute to fully buffer up, we can see what our total count is with an extra set of guns added. My total storage on all of the belts, the guns, and the inserters comes up to 252, which is not bad. But then again, if I'd stacked it in the first place, I would have had 500 rounds between the belts and also the first row of guns. If I then increase that by, well, another row of guns on my row of guns, okay, can I delete those ones? Cool, excellent. We can see that the 32 rounds, 32 rounds, 32 rounds, only 16 rounds at the far outside, because they're only fed by one particular inserter, whereas all the other ones are going to double dose. These ones also got a double dose because they have 2 rows of inserters running, and I'm up to 540 rounds and counting. And well, we know we can store an awful lot of ammo on this small amount of belt that's missing. So this will vastly increase the amount of total ammo storage I have, and therefore the total amount of storage I can buffer up in the meantime. So of course there's also Asteroid Collectors. Asteroid Collectors we're not going to be covering as part of this video. There's a dedicated video, I'm going to link up the top right hand corner, for Asteroid Collectors, but of course you could also store items inside Asteroid Collectors, mainly obviously asteroids, but yes, this one has a pre-made set of filters that is set into the machine, and of course as we empty out the different types of asteroids, the filters re-enable, and then we can go grab more asteroids to refill up our asteroid collector and make sure we can store the maximum amount in there. Again, they have many different storage options. If we look at their storage size, it's 39 to start with, but at legendary it goes all the way up to 64, which as far as asteroids are concerned, it's actually a very efficient way of storing asteroids, because you are, well, only 3x3 tiles, which means you're storing 2 asteroids per tile. That's not bad. But of course we have more storage options. Of course we have the cargo bays we've already spoken about, but of course you could run a yellow underground underneath the storage bay. So if you run a yellow underground for, like, say your ammo belt underneath your storage bay, then you can store 108 rounds of ammo on just one side of the belt with just a yellow. Had you used a red, it gives you a little bit longer belt. It means you can store a little bit more, 140 rounds. Should you move up to blue or green, you can still only one side of the belt, but we are stacking the ammo, so that gives you 272 or 204 by just running things underneath your storage base. So it turns out the kids were always right. The best storage location for everything is definitely under the bed. Sorry, under the bay, yep. But that doesn't always work, because over here I have another example where we have, well, 10 storage bays. 10 storage bays, I'm using asteroids. The reason I'm using asteroids is often on a very good ship design, having some sort of buffer for your asteroids is not a bad idea, just in case you hit a patch of, well, space that doesn't have any asteroids or doesn't have the type of asteroids you would like. So having a buffer is not a bad idea. And as I said, I have 10 storage bays. If I was to put inside 10 storage bays that each hold 20 items each, and then I put asteroids in there because they have a stack size of 1, well, times by 1, I would store 200 asteroids inside these 10 same storage containers. If I used undergrounds to, well, zigzag back and forth, I could store 1,856 asteroids. Technically, I am using a little bit of extra room because we are popping out both sides, so technically you could say that I had 15 bays by a stack size, well, a total stack size. They hold 20 stacks each, but they still have a stack size of 1, which means I'd be holding 300 asteroids compared to 1,800. Should I have put them on belts and run them underneath? Now, this doesn't always work. It all comes down to the stack size of the item. Asteroids are a prime example because they stack in a size of 1, so they tend to take up an awful lot of inventory space. On the flip side, how do we use something like ammo, which has a stack size of 100? Well, you can see on the same amount of belts, so we have the same 10 storage containers and belts zigzagging underneath, I'm storing 7,412 rounds. Had I used storage containers, so I actually filled the storage containers instead, I would have filled 10 storage containers that have 20 slots each, but each stack of ammo stacks up to 100, which means I actually would have stored 20,000 rounds in the same area had I just filled the storage containers rather than worrying about using an underground to zigzag back and forth. The advantage of the underground means you can use that space and run things back and forth. Also means you have a terminus where you can sort of leave the ammo at the end, whereas you can't directly have an inserter interact with a storage bay. It has to interact with the hub, and there's no guarantee that your hub is where you want to put ammo in and ammo out. So you could end up wasting a lot of space, a lot of time, taking all the ammo all the way there to then bring it all the way back. But there is lots of other options when it comes to belt storage. One of the options that has been in Factorio for quite some time, and I don't know whether you realize or not, is that different colored undergrounds don't interact with one another. So if I was to grab a little bit of yellow belt and connect my iron into my yellow splitter, you can see that it's going to pop out here because yellow goes with yellow. And should I grab a bit of red belt and hook my carbon into my red belt, it's going to pop out over here. And then finally, the same applies with my blue. If I plug in the ice, it's going to pop out over here, which means you can do what's been common in Factorio for a number of years called belt weaving. And it's something that people would sometimes do when they needed to fit a lot of resources through a very narrow area, or feed an awful lot of machines with not a lot of leeway. But take into asteroids, which has a stack size of 1, and especially if you're talking late game, where you need to have the Prometheum asteroids to, of course, make the Prometheum science, you can get things very well stacked. As you can see from this little example, we're going to snake this all the way through left to right and slowly work our way up before we get to the top. And then we're now going to snake back the other way through the red undergrounds. And then finally, we're going to snake the red undergrounds back in the opposite direction. You might have also noticed a problem with this, and that is my overall belt speed is going to be limited to 15 because I'm using yellow undergrounds. So it does mean I do trade away total speed for total storage, but it is a very, very good storage option should you need to store a whole lot of things. In fact, we have basically the very same design right here, and this is actually storing 2,998 asteroids inside this area. This area being 14 tiles by 12 tiles, which means if we do 14 times 12, that equals 168. It actually means I have an item density of 17 per tile. So I'm storing 17 asteroids per tile, whereas normally you'd be able to store 4 inside a belt, or 8 on a single belt. So we're storing 17 on a single belt. So we're pretty much doubling our density of items in a belt tile, but things can get a whole lot worse depending on how far you want to take them. Here we have things taken to the extreme. Now here at the extreme end, this is holding 81,355 asteroids in total, and that is an item density of 30. That means on every single tile, there is technically 30 asteroids. As you can see from some of the curves hold less items, but a straight belt should hold 8 items. But it definitely means that, yes, the storage capacity for this is absolutely massive because there is 30 asteroids on every single tile because this thing is snaking back and forth left to right. Now, it does come with some advantages and some disadvantages. The biggest one is going to be that this is going to take so long to fill and so long to empty. It is massive and it's going to take you hours to remove that, hours to get this thing filled and then hours to get this thing emptied. And this doesn't have any yellow belt in it. If it had yellow belt, you could probably increase the density, but there's just so many asteroids in here, it's going to take you forever to get the damn thing filled and emptied. So it has pros and cons, but it can be very, very useful, as I said, for storing Prometheum asteroids. It's also very, very helpful if you just want to buffer up some asteroids or possibly some sort of production on your spaceship. So you wanted to have explosives to make sure that you didn't run into too many asteroids, and you wanted to make sure you buffered up a little bit of spare explosives or spare railgun rounds, then you definitely have some options. Over here on the left-hand side, I happen to have a storage configuration for 3,822 asteroids, and that has an item density of 19. Now, it's not using any yellow belt, so again, probably could increase the density just a little bit with some yellow belt thrown in here, but an item density of 19 is not too bad. 30 is definitely the extreme end, 20 is a pretty good, and 15 is a so-so. It does mean 15 is generally 2 items or twice as many items per tile as just a normal belt, so it's definitely an improvement, but something you need to take into consideration, along with how slowly some of these things empty. That's probably the biggest consideration. So to mitigate some of that issues you may have with these sort of storage combinations emptying, you can change up builds. And as you can see with this one, this actually has a direct through from one side to the other with like a priority throughput. So it means the one on the left had, I don't remember how many items, about the same amount and an item density of 19. The one on the right has slightly more items because it has an extra bit of belt coming through, but also has a belt density of 19, and just importantly, this is tileable. So you can take this whole build and then slap a friend right beside it. Make sure you keep the same belt storage and belt density. But as you can see, I'm passing the Prometheum through at full speed because it has that priority belt popping all the way through. But maybe that's not for you. Maybe you're not worried about priority. You're worried about, well, your setup and how things actually work. And maybe you want a higher belt density. 19 is not good enough for you. So over here we have another couple of designs. This one has 15,000. This one has a bit higher, but still 15,000. Has a belt density of 22. This one only has a belt density of 19. But as you can see, this is bringing in from one end and dumping down the other, which technically means that if you want to take this whole build and rotate it, flip it, that's so hard to see. Vertically flip. There we go. Vertically flip, you can put the next build beside the first build and so on and so forth. So you can tile this along and have items enter at one corner, leave at the other corner, enter at this corner, leave at the next corner. But it does come with its problems, as always, with only having red belt speed. Or you have a similar design, slightly lower belt density, but this has the advantage of your input and your output are right beside one another. Also comes with a little bit of wires pre-included, so you can make sure that you can read the amount of resources on the belt and have it on a signal wire, and even light up the lights should you want to add some circuit conditions as different items as the belt buffer does fill up. Yes, so these are both, again, different variations of the same sort of concept with different belt densities depending on what you're doing. Maybe you just want something a little bit more tileable. Maybe you just want to have some belt density, some storage density, whilst retaining something that is customizable and will suit your needs. So over here we have, as you can see, 3 designs, tiled left to right. So we have a total of 20,000 asteroids stored on these particular belts with an item density of 22, which is not bad. It does suffer from the same problem a lot of the other ones will, except this is exemplified by the fact that we're using yellow belt here, which means that yes, you end up with some very large gaps on your belts as you empty them. So they do take a little while to fill and to empty. Our very first example with that belt density of 30 takes over 30 minutes to fill and empty, something to take into consideration. Or we can have this one. This is my personal preferable design. It only has a belt density of 14, but it does come with the advantage of it comes with 3 separate sections. So we have the top section, which has the direct through belt, which means I get things in and out quickly. And then, of course, it is 100% tileable. So I can build the size I want and just put the tail end on. And then this I can make to whatever size that I require and whatever length I have on my ship. It doesn't come as a pre-made blueprint. It's square, rectangle, whatever it happens to be. And it means that I have the flexibility to design what I need and accept that maybe my belt density might not be quite what I want, but it does have the advantage, like I said, of it being exactly what I need at the time. Of course, all these different belt storage options are part of my Patreon pack. For those who support what I do here, they get access to my complete range of blueprints if you're interested. But we need to get back to storage with obviously the most dense storage capacity we can get to. Definitely save that one for last. And that is, of course, well, machines. So a little while ago, when we had Space Age added to the game, we've added a few new items. One of the items was a trash slot. So if we hook you up and we say read contents, and we want to have like Prometheum Asteroids to make Prometheum Science Pack, and we're just going to set your recipe like so, we can see that you're going to store 51 asteroids in there because I have a whole lot of inserters shoving in things as fast as possible. Now, if I was to change the recipe to something else, then we have trash slots. Now, trash slots were originally added with Glebber because, of course, you might be halfway through crafting something and then something spoils, like your nutrients, and therefore you need to have the nutrients go somewhere. So they go into the trash slot. They also go in the trash slot if you happen to change a recipe mid-craft. So it is very handy because you now get the resources back. In Factorio past, you didn't always get the resources back, but it also means that we can fill up trash slots. Now, trash slots are a whole different mechanism because in theory, you would assume that if I had a set recipe on here, I could set the recipe with a combinator. Turns out I can't. But what I can do is I can definitely fill up the trash slots. I now have 100 pieces of Prometheum, 50 in the trash slots, well, 49 in the trash slots, and another one over here. Now, of course, I can go back in here and change the recipe and then select the recipe again and fill it up. Now I have 151, which is painful. It's a lot of different interfaces to click through, or we could use the copy paste, because I can't set a recipe with a combinator whilst this thing's in the trash slot. It's one of the things the devs added to make sure that you couldn't accidentally change the recipe of something halfway through a craft. But now I have a situation where I can store a whole lot of Promethean asteroids inside a single, well, 5x5 building. So 5x5 building is 25 tiles. 25 tiles is a an item density currently of 20. We're up to 20. So if I go through this copy paste. If I go through this process a couple more times, we could probably get above the 30 that's required for us to beat our current record, which I think we're just about on right about now. Also, more importantly, I can Control Z these changes, which does make my life a whole lot easier, and we can just keep going backward through the recipes to increase the amount of asteroids that I happen to have stored inside one building. Now, if you're going to ask me how much can you store inside one building, I can tell you that I've got up to well, I ran out of room on my counter. Yeah, it was well over the 999,000 stage, and the game kept running for a little bit before the PC imploded. So I'm assuming that I can store an awful lot of items inside a 5x5 area. What's that belt density? I don't know, but it's approaching 100, I believe. Anyway, with all that said and done, I'm going to be calling this particular video here. I do hope this has been helpful in your different ways that you can store items inside Factorio, inside Space Age, on your spaceship. And at the same time, I am going to remind you, you should probably hit the subscribe button if you want to see the next follow-up video. We'll be covering weapons. I think we're due for a weapon video because there's a number of different options you have for, well, killing off the space spiders, because the last thing I want to do is see an asteroid head through your spaceship. But with all that said and done, I'm going to be calling this video here. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed, and by all means, have a look down in the description or in the pinned comment below for other tutorial videos we've been covering as part of this series. Anyway, with all that said and done, like I said, thank you for watching, hope you've enjoyed. See you in the very next video. All right, bye.